So I got the air compressor right here. We have the air locker accessory stuff. That's the Airline, the solenoid, the switch, fittings, and we have the ARB manifold kit for the locker. So I'm just doing some prep stuff because we got a trip coming up. It's kind of crunch time, and I'm gonna use that mount to kind of finagle to fit the manifold and the compressor and mount it somehow to my Tundra because there is no mounting kit for it. So we got a brand new compressor. This has all the harnesses. Alright, we're just gonna pull everything out and then take a look. Alright, so I have no idea what this mount was actually for, but basically I'm gonna use it for the compressor up top and then the manifold kit right here in the front. We'll see how that works out, but I think this might be okay. So I think if I can get it to bolt like that, it looks like I can bolt it all the way across and maybe have a bolt here, here, one back here, or right, even right here, then it should be okay. Also, I have a bunch of bushings from my old Tacoma. These were supposed to go on the struts in the back, but actually they didn't work out. So I have these to use as mounting points I could cut, or I have these old rubber Baja design spacers that I can probably use too in these bolts. So I'm gonna try this stuff out to get this to mount up to my truck. Okay, with that out of the way, we need to prep this guy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put the filters on. We're gonna pop these caps off, get the filters on. We're gonna install the fitting here because this is gonna have a hose from here going to the manifold kit. So let's get that going. All right, we got the filters on all these fittings. If you're using Teflon tape, make sure that you put it in the orientation that you're going to be screwing it in so it doesn't bind up on you. All right, that's gonna do it for now on the compressor. We're gonna move on to the manifold. We're gonna put the solenoid on here and the fitting for this. We're gonna leave this loose for now because we don't know the orientation based on where it's gonna go in the engine bay. Yeah, anyway, there is a holes right here from the clips from the original harness for the wiper blades. I might use that, this bolt right there, and then there's two existing threaded holes here, so I'm just gonna find bolts hopefully that can fit here, and then I might be able to just use these. So I mocked up a little template. My idea is that the compressor is gonna go this way, the manifold's gonna go this way, and mark the two holes, this hole right here and then the two openings right there. So that should be plenty to be able to mount this. And I'm gonna take this template over to my mount and drill the holes, and those are the two bolts right there, two holes, and that existing bolt that I'm gonna use. Got our template lined up, marked the holes. So these would be where I'm gonna drill for the mounting points. I'm gonna use black for the holes for the manifold and for the compressor. All right, went ahead and cut the sides off because we're not going to need that, but we'll keep these just in case we need to make a little bracket from it. There's also the original bracket that came with this thing, but like I said, maybe we'll use it, maybe we won't. Just gonna clean up these edges and start drilling holes for the compressor. So your ARB kit comes with a drilling template like this, matches up with the holes at the bottom, and that's what we're going to use to match our holes on our mount. Alright, I did quite a bit of mocking up before I got to this point. I ended up moving the power steering mount forward a little bit. I unbolted the bolt on this side. I'll show you here in a second. But looks like this is where it's going to sit. So now I know that's pretty much where it's gonna live, And got one bolt down there and two right there. I'll show you right now. Pulling this guy off. I can't do it with one arm. Yeah, so this is what we ended up with. The two mounting positions there. One that's going to go through the fender hole down there. And that's the existing mount for the power steering. As you can see, I just moved it forward. And then this is going to be bolted down. And then there's going to be this guy with another bolt that I have that fits here, bolted down. All the hardware that's for all this I'm reusing from old mounting brackets and whatnot. So just remember, if you have old hardware that you're not using, just put it in a jar and it'll come useful later. All right, I swear I checked this like 20 times already, but I wanted the top of the mounting portion to be about 3 inches away from the edge, because the compressor is going to sit this way. Since we have it all mocked up, I'm going to test this one more time and put this inside the truck with the compressor on there to make sure that that's exactly where I wanted it mounted before I drill the holes in there. And then if everything's good, then I'm going to drill the 8 holes. And we can finally mount the compressor onto here, and then the manifold piece right here. And then from there we can mount this bracket with the manifold and the compressor into the truck. So here's our quick connect fitting. We're going to put it on the solenoid on this opening that you see here. I'll put some tape on there and put that on there, and that's going to go right here because the airline is going to feed off of this side of the engine bay. So we have this all mocked up. So this is the hose to the manifold. We have the solenoid. It's pointing upwards with the quick release right there. So when we put the airline in, you can just push it in and it'll be good to go. I marked the holes for where this manifold is going to sit. And same thing with the compressor. So now it's time to drill and bolt us all down. Okay, we got this all mounted up. Got the hose over the manifold, solenoids in, ready to go. Now we're just gonna mount it up to the truck. All right, so this is what we ended up with. I got 2 bolts right there and one going right there through the fender. Still a little flimsy, to be honest. I think maybe I'll take the time to pull one more bolt right here when we come back from this trip. But the other thing too is it might rattle against this hard line back here. But I did my best to make it fit, and there it is. Just need to wire it now through the firewall to the switch, which we need to put in, and then should be able to get compression into this thing and hook up the airline to this, and good to go. So I just finished an off-roading trip, and I will have to say my mount survived. The only thing though is that it's still a little shaky. I mean, it's like it's moving. It's got a little play. So these bolts held up pretty good. That one back there held up, but I think I'm gonna put one more right here, just so that I have extra support for this guy. Okay, it may have made that hole a little too big, but it's okay. I reinforced it with a couple washers. This is a lot more solid now. So now we're gonna work on the airline and the switches. Last I'm gonna work on is the power, because we don't need that until the very end. But let's work on getting the airline fed in through here. Okay, so we're underneath the truck right now. Here's the fitting. And you're gonna need a 6mm airline. Don't make a mistake that I made. That blue airline comes in a 5mm from ARB, so you need a 6mm. And then you're gonna need your fittings handy. Specifically, you'll need the little brass crush washer right there and the receiving end to that. I'll show you in a sec. All right, so use the open end fitting like that, and here's the airline, and you have this fitting that's going to feed into that guy, and you have your brass fitting. There's a skinny side and a fat side to this. Skinny side goes in down because it's going to clamp down as you tighten this bolt. So your feeding it like this. So I can get it in there with one hand. Like that. That. You're gonna start feeding this in by hand. And once it starts tightening down, get your 12mm wrench and tighten it down until you get a snug fit. So with the fitting in place, we have the exhaust right here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Here we go. The exhaust right here. We're gonna have to go up by the frame brace for the bed. We have to give it a little slack because if the diff drops down and in the future if it flexes too much, you got to be able to let the diff come up and down and whatnot, and or the axle I mean, and you have to let it droop. If you have it too tight, you might risk ripping the line off. So just give it a little slack, and then I'm gonna go up towards the top. I'm gonna scoot out here. So I followed the top here, and then we're just gonna follow the frame all the way to the front. Let me show you what we ended up with. There's a fitting. I gave it like a little loop up top so it has some room to droop. Followed the bed across the frame. As you can see, I left it a little loose so that I can be happy with the tie down points. I followed the frame up here because we want to stay away from the exhaust. Okay, and then up here I got kind of creative. I actually fed the line into the frame and fished it out from a hole on the other end. I'll show you that. Came out of here and looped it behind the fender well. And the reason I looped it back here instead of feeding it through one of these holes is that I'm gonna actually be tubbing this for a 35. So in case we have to cut it, you know, be aggressive with the cut, then I don't want it to be here because we might have to cut this area. But since the wheel is going to be sitting out a little more, I think we're only going to be focusing up here anyway. But besides the point, it's here, up towards the top, and then fed behind these hard lines. And now we just need a cut to fit to the solenoid, which is right there. Okay, so moving on to the switches. We got our switch that's going to come from the compressor, feed to the inside of your cab, and then here is your switches. One's going to go to the solenoid, so that's switch 1, and the other one's going to be to the compressor switch, I believe. So let's get this stuff fed through the firewall, and I'll show you the routing that I've done. I'm going to use, again, this solenoid right here on the passenger side for the entry. So one important thing to mention, so I hooked this switch. This has 2 plugs because if you would have 2 solenoids running 2 lockers, the way that they wire this, I guess, is yellow and black is switch 1, green and black is switch 2. Here is the ends of that switch. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tape these to this window thing to open the blinds, and then I'm gonna feed it together through that solenoid right there. All right, so I removed this piece and the glove box piece. This piece is it goes like this, and it's 3 bolts. It's 1, 2, and 3. And then for the glove box, it's just 1 and 2, and then you just pull up and out. So I fed it through. I fed it up here for the switch wire. Switch wire is going to go in this direction. I might have to pull off the radio to be able to feed it all the way through, but it's just going to be fed behind it. And if I was to take off the radio, there's 1 bolt hidden up here. There's 1 up there, and then all the other bolts are behind these switches. All right, so like I mentioned, there's 1 bolt up here. There's 3, 1, 2, and 3. You pull the face off. Just careful because you have some harnesses back here that you're gonna have to unplug, but that should give us enough access to feed the wire behind there. All right, we're almost done up here. We ran the power all the way across that wire loom I had worked on. Hit up the battery. So the only thing we need to do up here, really, we tied up our switch right there so it's not on the wing. Take this cap off and then add this ARB quick release for the air fitting so that we can pump up our tires. All right, I think this is about where we left off. So I was able to feed the switch cable behind the radio, pulled it all the way here, and then I took off the bottom of the steering column panel. There's 4 bolts. It's one, I think the other one is here. There's one on top and another one on the bottom, and the whole thing just pops right out. Actually, the other thing is this hood latch. It's held in by 2 screws. Just take those 2 screws out and then you're good to go here. So what we're looking for is room, and obviously on this side it's pretty crowded. I'm not sure that I want to put the switches there, especially with the brake emergency brake pedal right there. So it looks like the only space that we have is here, and on the panel looks like we could put 1, 2, and 3. The reason I say 3 is right now we got the compressor, we got the rear locker, and I leave a space for the 3rd switch would be the front locker. If I do that down the road, only thing is there's a metal piece back here, so you just got to be conscious of cutting it so that they fit 1, 2, and then if I ever have to do the 3rd one, then I have to notch this metal piece. But not something we're going to worry about right now. We're just going to put the 2 switches in and then cut it nice and neat so that we can hook that up, and I'll show you what the result. I don't know what was in here before, but I don't know if you can see that little square right there. That square actually follows this square in the back, and it's right before the metal. So we're going to try to follow that line as we're cutting. Got a Dremel kit, so I'm going to use that to cut. So this is where the first switch is going to live. Now we just need to mark the height of it, which is, let's see, looks like 1 3/4. So we're just gonna go 1 3/4 from the top there. Essentially, take your time with this guy. This guy fit pretty good. This one too loose. Holes is too big, but fit nicely. We're gonna have to figure this one out later. I left like an 1/8 inch between these 2 switches. I have to cut into this, but whatever, not a problem right now. All right, back underneath the truck. So now we have the wires that we fed into the firewall. This goes to the harness. This matches up pretty easy. It's all the colors match up except the red. Red goes to purple. And then you have the rest of your switches. You have your switch 1 and switch 2, and then you have your isolator switch that goes to your compressor. So those are the 3 that stick out or branch out from the main harness to the compressor. Anyways, then you have 2 wires sticking out. One is for power and one is for illumination. The way that I did it here is that I went underneath the panel, and I think the power needs to be at least a 15 amp and the illumination needs to be at least a 7 amp. So I have mine. I used the accessory one, and I used the gauge one for the illumination. So accessory for power and gauge for the illumination. And I used a fuse taps. You can see here. Let me pull one off. So I used a fuse tap. I just ended up cutting the other connection they had, and then just used one of these that has a little solder thing in there when you heat it up. This is an HHH fuse tap. There's different kinds of fuse taps, so make sure you get the right one for the fuses that you have in your truck. Then again, I used the 15 amp one for the accessory, and then let's just test it out. All right, so let's see if I can do this with one hand. So I have the key in the ignition. Turn the accessory. Oh, it's illuminated. See, turn on the truck. All right, we hear the compressor go off. Let's see. Yep, compressor's on. So that means we have power and we have illumination to our switch. The ARB lights up. That means we're good to go here. So let's see if our locker turns on now. So one thing I forgot to mention is the wiring on this is actually not too complicated. If you can see in the back of the switches, there's numbers right there, and the diagram inside the ARB manual is actually pretty easy to follow. You see right there, it tells you exactly which ones to go where. I hate electrical stuff and I'm terrified of blowing stuff up, and I can follow this pretty easy, so you can too. All right, test number 2. Truck is on. Compressor, let's see. It's pressurized. What about the locker? Nice. All right, so that means the locker is on. So the last step we're gonna do is we're gonna put the truck in the air, in the rear at least. We're gonna spin the wheels, and basically it should lock into place and both should spin in the same direction. All right, so with the open differential, these should spin in different directions or opposite directions. You can see clockwise, counterclockwise. So now we're gonna go and turn the truck on, turn on the locker, and these should lock into place and rotate in the same direction. All right, locker is on. Let's see if it clicks into place. Oh, there it goes. So now it's locked. Oh, it's really hard to spin, but it did lock into place, so that's what we wanted. So this is what I ended up with. I have my 2 switches. As you can see here, kind of ran into an issue here. I could have been a little smarter and maybe move these down more, and then that way I could have had the room for the 3rd switch here. The good thing is there's nothing behind here, so if I wanted to, I can just cut here and then move the compressor switch over, and then I would have the 2 locker switches here. But I tucked in all the wiring behind here. I was able to put my cap back on for the fuse taps, zip tied the remaining wires that were up here, and yeah, it's good to go. If you found this helpful, share it with a buddy. Check out the Dirtbag Garage on Instagram, or my own page, Dr._Omiz on Instagram. Yeah, dude, there's more videos to come on this build.